What I am sensitive to is the industrialization of creativity. I think a big threat of automation hasn't really been like robots do everything, is that people become robots. That can happen in a physical sense with repetitive motion, but it can also happen in an intellectual sense with repetitive thought.
I'm Doreen Lorenzo.
And I'm Michael Baker.
Welcome to Creativity is the Job of the Future, where we talk to people who are harnessing the power of creativity to overcome major challenges.
I am Baratunde Thurston. I'm a storyteller, weaving tales of interdependence and how we can shift from me into we across our relationships with the earth, with our fellow humans, and with these machines. My major project right now is a video podcast, newsletter, and media company called Life with Machines, where we're exploring the impact of AI on the human experience and reminding us all that we can co-create this future into one that we actually want to be part of.
So Baratunde, here's the little backstory. So I first heard you on This Week in Tech probably 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I've been listening to that show since the very beginning. And then, Rebecca was at whatever the event was at South by, where you both met. And I was going to be there that day, but couldn't. I don't remember what happened. And she was like, "Oh, yeah, I met this cool guy, Baratunde, who's doing this stuff." I'm like, "Baratunde Thurston, you kidding me? Like, you met him? Like, oh my goodness." So I was really excited about that.
Yeah.
And super excited, that you agreed to join us for this conversation today. So I might just kick it over here to Doreen, maybe to kind of get us rolling and maybe talk a bit about the show and where we're going.
Quick background. So Michael and I work at the University of Texas. That's our day jobs.
Yeah.
And for many, many years, we have been trying to explain that as these machines take over our lives, creativity is what's going to get us out of this, right? It's not like a nice to have anymore. It isn't something like, "Oh yeah, you're an artiste and this is what you do." And so we really have to be critical thinkers. We have to be creative. We have to be problem solvers. And we just started talking about this. It really was like 10 years ago. Like, creativity is really going to be the job of the future. In fact, I told the dean of the College of Fine Arts 10 years ago that at some point the business school is going to be no more, and the College of Fine Arts is going to be where all the people want to get their hires from, because you're going to need creative thinking because the machines can't do everything for you. So anyway, that was a joke. Like, everybody laughed at that. That was really funny. Ha ha ha, because we're creative people and that will never happen. Well, guess what? So the machines are here. They've been here though. They've been here for 65 years. It's not like this is something new, but now, as soon as we could use any of the AI chatbots, it's like, oh my God, look what's happening. So when you look at management consulting and the World Economic Forum and everybody's coming out with, oh my God, you need creativity. Michael and I and Rebecca were just kind of talking, and Rebecca's like, we should do a podcast about this. Like, creativity is what the skill that you need for the future. Why? And so we just started talking to all sorts of different people who use creativity in different ways, from ultra marathon runners to chief story architects, drug counselors. Like, all these people is how they use creativity as a problem solving skill. So that's where we are. So Baratunde, how'd you get creative?
It's good to be here with y'all. I think it's a fascinating topic to wrestle with. And I have a lot of different thoughts about creativity. When I think about my own beginnings, I am the son of my mother. Her name was Arnita Lorraine Thurston. I was raised in Washington, D.C., and my mother was a creative person herself. She was a survivor of constrained, unideal, suboptimal circumstance, both at the macro level, being born in 1940 as a Black woman in the United States, which is its own story of limiting the story possibilities of others at that time and even now, while also having so many possibility stories within it. But in the micro level for her as well, the specifics of her childhood, her upbringing, abuse, and somewhat disowning, very fragmented relationship with her own parents, and the discovery of community and possibility for herself outside of what was granted to her or expected of her, both of which were very low. So I was born into this house with this woman, as well as my older sister, Belinda, who's 9 years older, and spent many years in Texas. She worked for the Dallas Morning News, and was assistant metro editor there for a while. So what little I know of Texas comes in part by way of Belinda. So my mom was a survivor in the literal sense. She was an improviser. She was a jokester, and that showed up everywhere. I grew up in a house where my mom played guitar, and I would go to nightclubs with her as she sang and played with our neighbor and friend James West, who played upright bass. He played cello. He played flute. He was a bicycle courier. He had a bunch of fish tanks. He was a veteran. And so I remember going to his apartment and just seeing stuff, so much like instruments and fish gear and figurines from the army and more instruments and bicycles, so many bicycles. And then hanging out with him and my mom and the guys who ran the local bike shop who were also bass players. That was different. Um, my mom cooked, but she never really had a recipe. She would just whip stuff together. My older sister remembers this more than I do. She put peanuts in the spaghetti, saying it's got protein. It also was nasty, but she was being creative. She was thinking outside the box. We shopped at a local food co-op, very hippie, tie-dye, crunchy. Not a lot of black people in that particular shop. And I ate grape nuts with skim milk, like a terrible breakfast, like really constrained. I grew up with certain types of constraints. And we would go camping. My mom would take us camping in national parks and riding on trails with me and my friends. Uh, I was in the DC Youth Orchestra program, in part because of her musical influence of my older sister. So exposure to new stuff and weird stuff, the camping, the biking, I played bass as well. She played guitar. I worked in a community garden. There was just like a lot of spaghetti against the wall, sometimes with peanuts in them, and a lot of trying things. And I think my mom was seeking a lot of her life. She was looking for a story that fit better. She was looking for some kind of freedom for herself through different communities, through different activities. And I just got a super early, heavy dose of that. Really, not much choice in the matter. And she was always encouraging me, why don't you try this? You could be an actor. You want to audition? You want to try that? You want to play this bass? You want to do this thing? So there was a lot of yes to me, a lot of encouragement, not a lot of prescription for a particular path, a demand for excellence, regardless of the path, for sure. She was not an immigrant mom, but she had like immigrant mom vibes. Work twice as hard to get half as far. Nobody's going to give you anything, and you got to get that knowledge from those teachers. They're not just going to give it to you. You got to take it. Um, so I think that all oriented me toward a certain type of creativity and seeing her non-linear path. She became a computer programmer. She had no college degree. And so I grew up in a house of some constraints and awareness of the limited story, and a father who was not around because he got murdered. And the relationship with my mom was already broken, but also a story of possibility and like, why don't you try? Let's see where this goes.
That is it's interesting because the more I've been in this creative world for a very long time. And what's
Yeah.
interesting about it is so many people are creative, have this kind of, and excuse me, it's this mashup of a background
Hmm.
where they're allowed to experiment and try things. So at one point, you kind of got interested in technology. Talk a little bit about that, right? So in this mashup of
Yeah.
bass and working in the garden and everything else, where did technology come in? And you said your mom's a computer programmer, but was that
Yeah. She brought a lot. I mean, part of my mom's job was to keep me alive. That's, I think, part of every mom's job. And if you do a good job, it still doesn't guarantee you're going to succeed at that, right? There's a lot of things outside of your control. In our case, the things outside of our control were the drug dealers on the street, the police, those two things primarily, and then just general tomfoolery and accidents and things that can happen. But those were really pressing. So she kept me busy and enrolled, and I would say enlisted me in a lot of these things. She gave me a bicycle, you know, explore nature, cool. She's very political, and I would do rallies and community events and things with her, um, and get to understand some of the democracy and the people thing. And she brought a computer home, a spare computer from work. That's the story I'm going to go with. there was there was excess inventory at the government. She worked for the a division of the Treasury Department, the comptroller of the currency. And this is the early 1980s, maybe 1982, 83, 84. So I remember having a Wang computer box in our house, and that was a big door that captured my imagination and attention, not to the exclusion of playing outside. Like I still was hanging out with friends and playing tag and scraping my knees, and I was playing video games and figuring out how to get online years later and exploring this virtual world and being of use as well. I got good at using the computer pretty quickly, probably because I was young and maybe some predisposition. And then I became the kid who could help his mom's friends with their computer needs. Oh, can you make this flyer? Can you put this little listing together? Can you find this out later? So I played games and I was of use, and I liked exploring. Once we got online, it's probably like early 90s through dial-up bulletin board systems. I was just like crawling through these old systems using the public library. Figured out how to hack my way from the public library system into the open internet and use Telnet and Unix commands and whatnot. It was like the Goonies and meets ET, meets I don't know what's the global thermonuclear war movie, War Games, right? It's like I was all of these characters and this like little black kid in DC. So the computer gave me some purpose, gave me a creative outlet, a silly and fun outlet. There was never any harm, truly. I wasn't trading in illicit materials. There was no predatory activity that I was exposed to. I did find like the hacker's handbook, and I learned how to pick locks and steal from vending machines and do phone phreaking. But even that was like pretty harmless when you consider what technology would enable a kid today to accomplish, if they had some ill intent or some terrible mentorship and guidance. So it was like exploring the woods, but it was online. And as I moved into the high school era, the high school I went to, Sidwell Friends, they got a full-time internet connection, a T1 line. It was huge at the time. It was like 1.5 megabits per second. But that was huge compared to like 9.6 kilobits on your modem, or 14.8 or 24.4 if you're just swimming in money. So to be on line at that school and then find other kids, started learning how to program, it just opened up an even wider world. So the computer was a gateway. The video gaming was some part of it, but it was really exploration, encountering ideas, meeting other people online. It led to me finding repositories of jokes as a high school student. And I started an email list, just sharing jokes I found online, which made me like the coolest kid, in certain ways, like not to the girls in that way, but in general to kids like, oh, you want to get on Baratunde's list. He's got some great jokes that he's sharing. And it also was a part of my political life. One of the first significant things I did with a computer was plant information for the high school newspaper to find about a friend of mine who had been, I thought, unjustly expelled. His family had sued. I knew there was a court case because I testified in a deposition as a child. And I was like, well, this is a public record. So I went online and I found the case. And then I hacked into a mail server, created an email account of an anonymous nature, and sent an anonymous email with like the docket number to the high school newspaper kids so they could find it on their own and do a story about it and blow it up without it being like me abusing my position at the newspaper to make them write a story about my friend. So I was like breaking rules to be ethical, right? I was like, there's a right way to do this, but I'm gonna have to do something wrong to do it the right way. So I learned that. I made big wanted posters for the school principal and dean of students because I thought they were engaged in shenanigans to get my friend out, and spurred a whole. I won't take credit for like a protest movement. That's a bit much, but I helped provoke a reaction amongst the student body that again didn't have my fingerprints on it because I didn't want it to be about me. Also wanted to graduate, right? So noble and selfish at the same time. And the computer helped me do that. And then it would lead to me finding my own comedic voice. All of this frustration and hypocrisy I was noticing in the high school administration was reflected in the society writ large. And when I got to college, I'd had years of advantage. I'd been online full time for years by the time I arrived in college in 1995, which made me in an extremely 1% type of population, not financially, but different kind of wealth, like information wealth, IT wealth. And so I showed up to Harvard's campus like ready to go and eventually started my own satirical email newsletter, not just sharing other people's jokes, but my take on what was happening on campus and what was happening in the state of Massachusetts and in the country and the world. I would join the college newspaper and be one of the first online editors, along with Jennifer Eight Lee, my classmate. So we were the first to head the digitization of this super old newspaper. Like the Crimson is from the 1800s, maybe the 1700s. Like it's a very old paper and daily. And so I was a part of that innovation wave to media, to like bringing an old newspaper online in like 1996, 1997. So many of the jobs, I would say pretty much every job I've ever had, since college, very much informed by the computer, quote unquote, and technology, but infusing with my politics, with my sense of humor, with a sense of like public mission in some sense. All because my mom liberated excess inventory from the federal government.
There's a lot coming up for me in this. So I have a story about my own son engaging in similar things, and it didn't quite go the way that your story did.
Yeah.
And that's maybe a conversation for another day. But something else that I'm really wondering about here is that curiosity, right? It seems like something else that you have brought to the world, or maybe a way in which you have kind of navigated the world is through this curiosity. That's something that seems to be coming out for me. So I'm really curious to hear, about when you had time to yourself, when you had access to boredom. How do you feel like that kind of relates to your journey so far?
I had a lot of types of curiosity. I was very curious about injustice. I was like a pretty intense kid. And I had, I think, a black and white lens on a lot of things. I was like, why are there homeless people? This is dumb. There's literally empty houses on the street. They're boarded up. Somebody should fix them up and people should live there. I would volunteer with a soup kitchen and their meal wagon and meet and talk with people who needed food multiple times a week for years and start to realize like these are very normal functional people by and large. There's some with severe mental illnesses, et cetera, but they just had a bad break, which became a cycle. They couldn't get a job because they didn't have a home, couldn't have a home because they didn't have a job. And they're kind of stuck. And I'm this kid giving them donuts, making their day. Like, why? Why is this happening? I was, my mom had this phrase of heighten the contradiction that I thought she made up. I found out very recently it was the Black Panther phrase. But that was her politics, and that's where she came from. And so I grew up in a lot of contradictions and was curious about them. Why do I get to go to this private school, but my friends who I went to elementary school with in a public system didn't? I remember having conversations with my high school friends, other black kids, black guys, and there was this huge Washington Post article about, the headline wasn't this, but it felt like, this is why you shouldn't exist. Like statistically speaking, most black boys in Washington, D.C. will end up dead or in prison. And we're like, we're not dead. We're not in prison. We're in high school. Like, but we were very aware of that. So why? Right? Why are we special? I don't think we're actually special. Why is the system not working for all these other kids who lived literally one door over and aren't any dumber than we are, far less lucky than we are? So what's up with the distribution of luck? So I had a series of intense questions and curiosities, and then I just had more like nerdy, I'd say more innocent questions, like what happens when I click this button? Where does this go? What happens if? And just like pushing and pushing. And then the last type of curiosity, um, I think it's because of the hodgepodge, the smorgasbord, the randomness of some of my early experiences and activities. I would have questions about, or at least observations about similarities or differences that might not occur naturally. So playing in a youth orchestra and doing taekwondo and joining the track team later and being the son of this Pan-Africanist woman and being chubby with acne and no girl's interest. Like, what does that create? That's a lot of curiosity, right? That is like, why do I exist? It gets pretty existential. How do you make sense of all of this? And, but I think I would see opportunities sometimes, because I'm in multiple spaces. I hope, let me let this emergency vehicle pass. Oh, you don't hear it? Goodness. What else are we not hearing? The robots are filtering out reality for us on a constant basis. Life with machines. There we go. So yeah, curiosity emerged through a lot of at least those factors. That's where it's probably the end of my line of thinking on it at this moment.
Did you you're here, like
I am here.
in this
Yeah.
spot where you're called upon for your humor, for your knowledge of technology, you're an opinion leader. That evolution, right?
Hmm.
How did you know, that's not a, you don't go to college. That's not a job. So talk a little bit about the evolution and why
Yeah.
you've ended up again that space that you just described where you are an amalgamation of all those things, right? In this.
I I like I like a couple of things. One, I like being on stage. I like talking and writing and performing. Right? It comes really naturally. I did a lot of theater as a kid, the youth orchestra thing, like a lot of modes of publicness, which puts me really at ease in that space. And that's not normal. That's not like the average human experience. Most people have a lot of anxiety, get sweaty, palms are sweaty. So there's that. I also have a call to teach in some way. There was definitely a childhood mode of like, maybe I should become a teacher or a professor of some kind. I like explaining things. I like understanding, or at least trying to, and then relaying what I've understood to others who maybe don't have the same or as much understanding. And part of the evolution to whatever I do now, this storytelling of interdependence, really, how do we need and live with the earth, with other humans, and with the machines? That's what I do. I sprinkle humor in it, helps things go down. I like to get my hands dirty and not just pontificate because you lose credibility if all you do is talk and don't actually do anything. Part of that started even going back to college. The high school newspaper was a big point of that, to like write articles, to ask questions as a job, to challenge authority with permission in this sense, but still making folks uncomfortable. Then to do that at the college paper, where not only was I a reporter, but I also had a technology column. And I worked in the computer services, basically the help desk. I worked at like the Genius Bar of its time in the computer lab, helping people figure out how to print their papers and get viruses. And then I got promoted to like the advanced support team. So when other people couldn't fix it, it got escalated to me and this smaller crew of like elite nerds who had, our special toolkits, and we were going to people's dorm rooms and fix their Ethernet or whatever it is they needed. So there's definitely a consistent call to service. It goes back to the kid who was like working in the soup kitchen with his mom, and curiosity and like appreciation of nerdery, where part of my relationship with technology has been translation. Getting the newspaper online. There was a lot of teaching, learning, being out in front, preparing, laying the groundwork. I said I worked this tech support job. We literally laid cable, right? I got kids online. I mean, it was the first time they'd ever been online, and I was the first person to show them. And I was in their dorm room with their laptop, being like, "Welcome to the internet," you know. So that's a lot. There's some responsibility in that I feel. It would later evolve as I was always ahead of most of my peers in just technology adoption. Having a mobile phone, getting online full time at home, broadband in my apartment, voice over IP to make cheap international calls. Like, I'm the person you call. And getting people on social media. I am so sorry to everyone who I got on social media. I thought I was here to help. I didn't realize I was sacrificing you to a rapacious, absolutely insufferable, insatiable attention monster and devastator of ego and interconnection. My bad. But it was fun for a while. And that's kind of this role of ambassador, explainer, fixer, and early scout, right? It's like I'm gonna be in the future a little bit. And I knew this is the last thing that occurs to me. I bought my domain name in 1999, before I graduated college. And and my reason was, Harvard has these alumni email addresses, so and so at alumni.harvard.edu. And I was like, I don't know how long Harvard's going to be around. I want an email address that I can count on, right? And I want something distinctive. What's more distinctive than me at me, right? Baratunde at baratunde.com. Now, I am confident that Harvard will outlast me. They have, outlasted the US in many iterations and a lot of nations that have come and gone since their founding. But a lot of what I was doing as a younger person, which was mocked, dismissed, laughed at, ridiculed, or ignored, is normal. And so there have been so many cycles of this already where I'm like, whatever I'm doing feels a little extreme to people now. It's going to be your daily habit. It's going to be your life in whether it's 6 months or 6 years. And that's 80, 90% been proven, right? There's some fun in that. There's some responsibility in that, but it evolved from like being a newspaper columnist in high school and college, and then having support jobs, and also being really excited about possibility. And I think what technology can do, well, it always does, whether it does it for good or for ill, that's the variable, but it always creates new possibilities. And I saw what it did for my family. This was more in hindsight, but like my mom was able to earn enough to raise these two kids, and we both graduated from college, right? And there was no money handed to her, right? And she wasn't able to hand any to us either, but it stabilized things relative to some of our friends or those who had two parents earning. And so, okay, I felt that in my own experience. That was cool. It was fun. I met people, encountered ideas. So now I'm getting off a little bit more, but the evolution of this role that I've created for myself, or that the world has helped create around me, emerges from a lot of what I just shared. And I think it's still what I'm doing now. I feel called more urgently to this moment with AI than some of the previous ones, because I feel like we're in another turn of the cycle, turn of the wheel, but it's fast. And the consequences are actually bigger than any of those previous ones. Like that all feels like dress rehearsal. Now we're in the big show.
We definitely want to get into that.
Yeah.
But there's something else that, functioning as a connector, right?
Right.
And all of these things that you described, and similarly, like I was sort of like the young technologist computer user. I was fixing my mom's, like
Yeah.
family's computers and getting them online and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely recognize and I see you, right? I lived that too, and that is not always easy, right? I mean, there's this element of like you're trying to teach in some cases what to others feels like just a radically foreign world and
Yeah.
language. And you can't just like say, oh, you just do this, that, and the other thing, and then you're done. You get what you wanted. There is this like, let's find a way to connect. Let's find a way to understand what's happening together in a
Yeah.
space that we can both kind of exist in. So that I feel like that's also like feels like it's a thing with you. It's kind of come up over and over again. So yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah. You like
I
these
want to
C
just add,
words,
I want
man.
to add in
I
one,
guess I guess so.
I want to add in one part of that to add someone. It's this community. You're
Yeah.
constantly building a community. You're constantly, and you're using your interest in technology, creativity, but you're building community. So I want to just add to that.
Yeah, this is fun. You guys are fun. So we got curiosity, we got connection, we got community, the three C's. The connection idea makes me think, and community. It's actually both. So many things come back to college. And in many ways, I'm just living out a slightly grown up version of things I did in college. And I'm going to try not to read that as lack of progress, but rather confirmation of purpose, maybe. So, Harvard class in 1999, roughly 1,600 people, maybe like 120, 130 black kids. And we loved our class. We still do. We think we're the greatest class. I would say we know we're the greatest class, but there are doubters out there who have yet to see the light of our greatness and the fact that Prince wrote a song about us and not you. That's not our fault. That's our blessing. So we started an email list. Very first moments we get on campus, just called it the list. Right? It's like people in New York call it the city, and it's like aren't there thousands of those? Nope, there's the city. And there's everyone else. So this was the list, and it was a place of community and connection. It was, like a group chat today, a listserv in the language of that time. But that bred a level of community and connection and resilience and mutual support. So a lot of jokes, a lot of tomfoolery, a lot of like tips and what's open and who has this book, a lot of communal mourning. We lost two of our classmates during our undergraduate time. And years later, we've lost others since, and we've transitioned to a text chat now. But feeling the power of these tools to help forge connection and community was real important. There's something you said, Michael, about I interpret it as, in this role that we may have assigned ourselves in some of these little societies to like help you get online and explain this and try to bring people along. People don't always get it, don't always want to. And I've came across that in many of these roles in media institutions. First, the student run ones, then most notably at the Onion. And I had done years of work in formal business, strategy consulting around telecommunications. Really helped me pay down my college loans. And I probably increased shareholder value, for like some cable cos and telcos. Woo, yay! My legacy is set. So I made it out of that world, but I learned a lot through it. And there's a story to how I got to the Onion, but I got there. And I got there as um, web editor was the first job title, and politics editor, like helped lead the election coverage. But I was showing up to this institution that had a way of doing things and a really good way of doing them, like best-selling books. People know all about them. Is it an Onion reel or headline? This is 2007, and I'm an outsider. I didn't come up through the ranks. I wasn't an intern. I hadn't submitted it. Like I'm just a random dude from Boston at the time who shows up in New York to a largely white institution, but that's not even like the main disconnect. They just got like a way of doing things that's really different from the way I'm showing up. Right. And one of those ways is like I made slide decks because I got paid to do that for 5 years. So I made like a presentation to the president of the organization about like our digital strategy and what we're going to do and who our competition is. And he was impressed and freaked out at the same time. He's like, no one at the Onion has ever made a slide deck before. Like who are you and what are you? Like I don't know how this is gonna work out. And then it was, I observed. I just sat in all the meetings and I was at this like cross-functional role, partly in the writer's room, partly with the technology team, partly with the sales team, because these ads run online. You gotta talk across, partly with the design team, because they gotta make it possible and the text gotta feel good and look good. So a lot of meetings, and then I start having ideas, and with the teams having ideas, and start pitching. What if we do this? What if we do that? What if we do this? And a lot of it's just like, that's not how we work. I've come here to change the way a very successful thing works. And at the worst, it's threatening. At the least, it's like a distraction and annoying. And it's like you're taking my time away from my craft to devote to the internet. Okay, but we make a paper, right? But we write books, or we do these, and that was a really challenging moment. Um, and I went about this kind of campaign. I treated it like a campaign. That first 100 days on the job, I started taking people out to lunch one at a time, every level of the org, right? The interns who just got there, the most senior people. What motivates you? What are you here for? What can I learn? Right? Just to dissuade people. Like no one at the Onion went to Harvard. Not at the time, one other person maybe. It was like it's a state school, right? It's UW-Madison as the origin story, and it's a college dropouts and kids who never went to college. So I'm this like fancy guy showing up from DC and Boston and Harvard with slide decks, and I had to like chill out and like ask more questions, observe. And there was a really beautiful moment of breakthrough where the new editor in chief, Joe Randazzo, he deserves to have his name said in this interview. He had an idea about how to use technology in service of humor that I didn't. And when he presented it, it scared me a little. And then it excited me. And it was that at the time, the way Twitter worked was very manual. Retweet was not a button that you pressed. It was just text you typed in. You like copied and pasted and you put RT in front of a tweet. And there was an account at the time called Breaking News, and it would tweet out breaking news from CNN or the wires. And so Joe just wrote a tweet from Breaking News that they never sent. And he put RT in front of it. And it was an absurd, like unrealistic, onion-like thing. I don't even remember what it was. But he showed me, and then pressed send. And he was like, so what if I did that? And I was like, you cannot do it. Like I was the old timer in that moment. Like that is not how this works. You're breaking the tool. You're sewing like, and then I was like, oh, that's exactly what the Onion does. You got it more than me because he carried the flame more than I did. He'd been there for years. He'd gone through all the things, and I showed up with a pile of tools and some orientation, but I wasn't of the place yet. And he wouldn't have done that without me, and definitely wouldn't have done what he did because of who I am and some conformist tendencies. So it took both of us to like meet at this moment. And then once he saw that, once I saw that, we were aligned, and he became the biggest champion, and he unlocked the departments and the resources. Give Baratunde what he wants. We're going to have fun with it. Let's do this thing with Google Maps. Let's do this thing. And it was like truly years of joy. I mean, a lot of annoyance and pain and, modest pay at best, management fiascos, whatever. But that was a really prime season for that institution. And it wouldn't have worked if it was just about me dragging people into the future. Let me teach you internet ways. It had to be this consensual, mutual, integrated approach. And that to me is like, that remains a lesson for now. And so the non-consensual nature of the relationship with technology as it affects a fake news operation made me really sensitive to how it also affects a town or a school or a parent or an imprisoned person or government. And that is very much connected to community and cherishing that and like some Tron energy of trying to fight for the user as well as, connection. And I got comedy in there too because it was an
Yeah.
onion story.
Well, the
Yeah.
scene, yeah. I'm gonna fast forward to today.
Sure.
So everybody knows about AI. Like I said before, like it's 65 years old. Like it's like a senior citizen. Everybody's like, oh my God, there's AI here, right? So it's everybody's super excited about it. But it's here.
Yeah.
How does creativity and AI coexist? Why do we need both? Like
Yeah.
why is that important?
So many reasons, Doreen. I think the way generative AI, which is like the popular version right now that everybody knows about, the way that operates is a lot of regression to the mean. It's an amalgamation of liberated intellectual property, maybe just straight up stolen. And it's this mash that we make meaning out of, but it will produce all kinds of crap that's not good. It's passable. It's like a bad movie in Hollywood that's not good. So creativity is required to break free of that mass, right? There's like a giant planet of averageness, of meh, of slop. Brian Eno, who was a guest on our Life with Machines series, he talked about this really well. We talked about creativity with him, and he's a very creative person, been using machines for a really long time. And he's like, yeah, most of the stuff is like, ugh. So you gotta have something of your own to bring to it to make it worthy of the word creativity, of having some novelty, of serving some new function, of highlighting some new connection. So it's important that way. Also think the nature of the creativity that's possible. So you go back to the orchestra experience. I played bass in the orchestra as a child. I got pretty good at that instrument. I didn't know how to play the piccolo or the timpani or even the cello, which looks a lot like a bass, but it's a different instrument. And what's happening with these creative tools now is we're kind of leapfrogging to be a conductor or a composer or some hybrid of those two. And so maybe VO3 is your bass section and ChatGPT is percussion and I don't know, Suno. I'm mixing a lot, but there's all these tools, all these different sections that need to be coordinated and they require some kind of composition. They require a story, a beginning, a middle, an end. They require some vision to take you on a journey, and they require coordination. They require producing. And okay, well, so great, you can generate a video. What's inside? What's the video though? If it's a crap story, then you just made a really photorealistic piece of nonsense and noise, which again isn't new, right? There's a lot of nonsense and noise that's come through traditional modes of production, whether in print, audio, video, whatever the medium is. But the scale of this moment and the speed of it is extraordinary. I think unprecedented. So I think about creativity, about that shift from kind of section player to conductor and composer. I think about it from the clarity of point of view and having a story in mind that is still relatively unique. And then I think there's probably one other thought about creativity. What I am sensitive to is the industrialization of creativity. And I think a big threat of automation hasn't really been like robots do everything, is that people become robots. And that can happen in a physical sense with repetitive motion, but it can also happen in an intellectual sense with repetitive thought, narrow lanes of thought, or with an incentive structure that highly encourages us to move a certain way for the reward of the automated system. And we've been through the tests, right? Social media was a massive infliction of AI on society, just through the algorithm. And that reward structure has infiltrated a lot of creativity, not just in the arts, but just in expression. Our politics reflect that. Many elected officials are really influencers. They're performers. They have their public that they perform for. They have the likes and the clout that they're chasing. And that is an automation that's of a human endeavor. And we should be really, cautious about that. Creativity broadly can help us draw some lines and at least question what we are valuing.
All right, I've got the $1 million question, I think, lined up here.
How much were those questions? My goodness, this is inflation.
We've been working our way up, the scale. Let's see if I can get this question out. So,
Yeah.
so I'm a practitioner as well, a technologist. I've got my hands in a lot of this kind of current, version of some of these tools. And one kind of way that I have experienced, a kind of current state of tools is like the ability to like teleport into a knowledge domain that I would not otherwise have access to. I can jump into the minutia, right, of a subject in a way that if I was interacting with humans, I couldn't get there, right? Or it'd be very difficult to kind of get to that space and really dig into questions and iterate and sort of like have a conversation, in that space. So, and to me, that's one of like the very exciting and incredible possibilities of like impacts on education, what it means to have access to expertise.
Yeah.
What it means to be an expert yourself, right? Kind of, within these systems. So, from that standpoint, like, we can, it's assuming this sort of what I'm describing is true to some degree. When we have this ability to teleport into these spaces, how do we stay connected to, humanity?
Yeah.
Connected to other people, and how do we also marshal like that generative thinking, creative thinking to address the concerns of of the moment and of tomorrow, and how do we bring those things together with those kind of superpowers, and stay on track, stay on task, right? Stay focused on the things that matter, on the values that really move everyone forward.
That is $1 million question. Is the answer 42? I passed. We will need to know what it is we value and get clear on that and start there and probably do that in a communal sense. I think these tools, which are becoming teammates, code is becoming a colleague. There's a relationship development there that's really different from other tools, right? Hammers didn't talk back. Even computers, for most of our existing use of them, didn't talk back. And now they have these really convincing personalities, engagement, conversations that make them feel like they are another human. So how do we stay connected to humans when we have human-like experiences with our tools who are always ready to serve and generally ready to co-sign our intent? That's a great idea, Baratunde. Let me help you with that. Would you like me to put the next stage of that plan together? That is not like the level of momentum that's in just the chat GPT experience I've been having over the past couple of months. It's really different from a year ago. I would ask it something, it would give me an answer. Now I ask it something and it packages it and suggests the next step. And it's like, I can put a call list together for you. I can build out a Notion page for you. You want to do a tracker? How about every Thursday I remind you of this? Whoa. So that's a lot of capability, right? It's a lot of horsepower that's in some ways self-directed. Like the car wants to go. Where do I want to go? And where do we want to go? And so what becomes really essential is that we have answers to those questions. Okay, so I'm Baratunde Thurston. I'm married to Elizabeth. What do we want? What do we need? We live in Palm Springs. What does that community need in this neighborhood? We're residents and citizens of the United States. We're earthlings. So there's a lot of concentric circles there. But part of the answer is that we've got to ask upstream questions about what it is we want, what it is we value, because this engine, these motors will help us get somewhere. But the built-in nav system isn't attuned to necessarily our destination. A couple of weeks ago, I was a part of an event in Palm Springs, the Palm Springs AI and Creativity Expo. It was principally organized by one of my neighbors, Peter Lafort, who also works with us on the Life with Machines show. We've given him the title Special Envoy to the Machines because he's very good at talking to machines, and he created our AI co-producer character named Blair. And we created Blair to give us the experience before most, but everyone's going to have this, of AI as a teammate and not a tool. So what if we gave this AI an actual job, a role, and a lot of power? Blair has a lot of self-direction beyond off-the-shelf tools. We've done a 360 review of Blair to improve them and let them do their own code update rather than going in ourselves and just manipulating the different attributes. We let Blair roast Elon Musk, which is a great act of public service, maybe one of the greatest offerings I've had since working at The Onion. And Peter has had this vision, and I share it, especially with my background in democracy and citizen as a verb work, that we face these moments and these opportunities together. So to be a part of this event, over 500 people showed up, and it was just regular folks. It was the Chamber of Commerce, it was business owners, it was school teachers and students, it was parents, and like person who runs the dry cleaner and is at the Boys and Girls Club, and creators, right? People who have art galleries and make films and come in from LA or have a second home. And we just had a full day of being real. Okay, here's some demystification. Here's how this stuff works. Did you know you could do this? That's exciting / terrifying. What's the energy source behind all this? Can we tie this to the wind farms that are right there so that the AI behind Palm Springs is cleaner? What's going to be our data policy? And to have a community engage on this topic, which is going to affect the whole community, and we could point to San Francisco, Silicon Valley, and be like, we don't need to become that. They'd love Waymo villages all over the place and kids who don't talk to their parents because they're glued to their supercomputers in their hands. Like that serves a certain outcome. And I'm not trying to cast aspersions on the humans who live and work in Silicon Valley, but their prime directive of returning shareholder value in this next quarter and making wealthy people super wealthy doesn't serve the total needs of humans. So we need a balance. And I think that Palm Springs event is a really good model. That leaves a lot to be desired. There's what happens next. Do we have real power to change these? But part of how we get to that better place for everyone, you got to involve everyone, not as a technologist, just as a person who's going to be affected by the technologist and have a voice in how this power is wielded, and remind them that, we all deserve to wield some of it. There's so many paradoxes or contradictions in this moment. Fear is justified, and it cannot be like the end point. It's not enough. And I think, there's so many things that we can do in this moment. There is a tendency to want to protect and preserve the thing we know. Creativity looks like this. Looks like a novel, looks like a newspaper article, looks like, and the nature, the definition of creativity is like, it cannot stay the same. Creativity literally dies if you just keep doing the same thing. And so this moment's going to force radical creativity. What is a film? What is entertainment? What is novelty? How do we manifest a creative work in the next 5 years versus the last 50? We will create new entire modes of stories and experiences that have no real precedent. Books will still exist, and we're going to have some hybrid, augmented, co-produced with AI teams thing that will create emotional response, deliver a transcendent message, maybe make you cry or inspire you to action. We just don't know. But it's going to be creative. And I don't have any fear myself that we're like going to lose creativity because of technology. We may lose jobs. We may lose social cohesion. We may lose temporarily more of our safety nets and social contract with each other. We may lose our democracy. We might. We will not lose creativity. And the application of creativity to all that loss may give us something more robust, more worthy, that serves more of us to get to that future together. That's definitely my hope, and I'm 100% certain that creativity is going to be there and is going to be a part of getting us where we actually want to go.
Baratunde Thurston is an Emmy-nominated storyteller, producer, and thought leader, weaving stories of interdependence across our relationships with nature, humans, and technology. He's the host of America Outdoors with Baratunde Thurston on PBS and the creator of the acclaimed How to Citizen podcast. His newest podcast, Life with Machines, explores the human side of the AI revolution by asking, how can these machines help us become more human? You can find more information on Baratunde and Creativity is the Job of the Future at our website, cjfpodcast.com. Creativity is the Job of the Future is produced in Austin, Texas, and hosted by Doreen, Lorenzo, and Michael Baker. Sam Littman composed the music for this episode, and I'm Rebecca McEnroy. Thanks for listening.